Good afternoon, everyone. We've got a large crowd and a room with an unwelcome barrier in it, so I hope everybody's able to catch us from behind it. But we wanted to get right underway because we've got a fantastic session this afternoon. So thanks for joining us for the Mayor's Best Practice session on the third education revolution. Thanks to all the mayors that are here. Also with us are members of the U.S. Conference of Mayors Workforce Development Council, as well as other guests. I'm Christopher Cabald, and I'm the mayor of the city of West Sacramento in California, just to the west of the city of Sacramento. And I am the chair of the Jobs, Education, and Workforce Committee for the conference. We want to particularly thank and recognize PepsiCo. We're going to hear from some of the great work that PepsiCo is helping to lead across the country in this space, but they are our sponsor for the forum, and also the drinks. So for a little product placement, thanks PepsiCo for your help and for your support. Now, the title of our session today is the third education revolution, which we are going to begin a conversation about. The revolution implies something society-wide, a paradigm shift, some significant changes. And what we're building off of are the first two education revolutions. The first being the advent of high school as the minimum expectation in this country for education and workforce development around the turn of the last century. So the notion that every American would earn a high school diploma as the baseline for education and workforce in this country was the first of the three education revolutions. The second that we focus on is the post-GI Bill notion of college for all. And that education beyond high school was necessary for virtually every American, and that work has been underway. Now, both of those are incomplete themselves, right? Not every American does finish high school. Not everyone does go and complete a college degree, certificate, or other credential. So the three education revolutions are not in sequence. They are cumulative and build upon one another, and we still have work to do in that space. And so just as a quick pitch, I think today we're releasing the Mayor's Playbook for the College Promise as an example of the work that we're doing in cities across the country to make that second education revolution real in terms of making sure that every American has the access to at least the 13th and 14th years of education or apprenticeship or certificate or transfer education. So we're releasing that playbook. And for mayors tonight, we also have a reception over at the Colonnade this evening to celebrate the release of that playbook. So please join us if you're around for that. So the third education revolution is itself focused on that even that is not enough. Even college as a one-time experience or high school as a one-time degree is no longer sufficient for today's economy, and it will be increasingly less so given the changes in the nature of work due to technology, automation, globalization, many other factors, the gig economy, and other factors in our society. And that instead, focusing on talent development and human capital development and lifelong learning is the next of the revolutions. Now, for those of you that have worked with higher education or others before, lifelong learning might sound like we're talking about somebody taking an Italian course in preparation for their trip to the Cinque Terre next summer. Or it might feel as though it's a couple of extra continuing education units for an attorney. Or it might sound like we're talking about sort of rapid response crisis workforce training as a result of a plant closure. And those are certainly all parts of that continuum, but we're taking a much broader notion of what lifelong learning is all about. Lifelong learning not simply for the joy of learning, which of course it is, but also for the purpose of continuously adapting and growing and making sure that we are the masters of the robots and not the other way around. But one of the challenges that we'll be engaging is the notion of lifelong learning centers learning around the individual and not solely around institutions, right? When the workforce and education system was about completing high school was the center of everything. When it was about college for all, it was about college as the unit of analysis. Now we're talking about the that life is yours. It's mine. It isn't the institutions. And so this is opening up a much larger conversation about the third education revolution and the array of public and private and nonprofit and crazy and animal AI partners that will be doing this work over the future. But today we really want to drill down on on some important work that's happening in this space with the existing institutions, with some community colleges and partnerships with mayors in this region of the country that are really pointing the way, leading the way around the potential and the need and how institutions are adapting and collaborating around the third education revolution. I want to introduce first Providence Mayor Jorge Elorza, who has made issues around children and youth and education really the centerpiece of his administration as mayor, with a wide array of coherent, coordinated initiatives from the very beginning of life all the way through, with a real eye towards a thoughtful, coherent, integrated approach that brings together not just the systems of education, not just child care providers, not just social services and housing, but all of it together in a coordinated way that delivers real success for all. And he'll be joined by the Vice President of Workforce Development at the Community College of Rhode Island, Julian Alcid, who will together they will kick off today's discussion. So, Mayor Elorza, thanks for joining us.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this important conversation. And I want to begin by recognizing and thanking Mayor Cabaldon for inviting us and for also really spearheading this important conversation that we all need to be having if we're not already in our home communities. So it's an honor to share with you some of the work that we're doing in Providence and throughout Rhode Island, particularly because I know that these are challenges that we all face in our home communities, but also that strike to the heart of our work as mayors. I know that throughout the country right now, there's a strong sense that people are being economically left behind. And that's fueling and causing a lot of the sense of division that we have in our communities. And so how do we close that gap and ensure folks that they have just as much of a shot at a middle-class life as anyone else? And so working with this frame of getting our folks at least to middle class by middle age, we've put together this infrastructure of support from cradle to career in Providence. And it speaks to a lot of research that is being developed and continues to come out really as we speak. In particular, I can imagine that many people in this room are familiar with the work of Raj Chetty and the Economic Opportunity Initiative. And through a series of really interesting articles, he's shown that if you stratify every member of your community into one of the 5 socioeconomic quintiles, you see some dramatic results where, say, you compare a poor white child and their chances of making it into the middle class or above, their outcomes and their odds are just the same as an African-American boy who grows up in a wealthy family or a wealthy household. And so we see some really stark and dramatic discrepancies along the lines of socioeconomic status, but also along the lines of race. And the reality is that in our country, these rags to riches stories are becoming less and less frequent, and folks have pointed out, perhaps very poignantly, that if you're looking for the American dream, more and more you should search in Canada. So that's something we're all very concerned about. And there's some really fundamental changes in our economy that are driving those challenges. As Christopher mentioned, or as Mayor Cabaldon just mentioned, the gig economy, the changing nature of work and the changing nature of jobs, and of course, the fact that quote-unquote robots are taking over. I ran across some statistics that I'd like to share that I think really drive home this point. The reality is that large companies today simply are not creating the number of jobs that large companies a generation ago were creating. So, for example, even Walmart at its height had 1.6 million employees, whereas Amazon has less than a quarter of that, 340,000. AT&T at its height had 758,000 employees. Google has 57,000 employees. And perhaps most dramatically, Kodak at its height had 145,000 employees. Snap has 1,800 employees. So the reality is that large companies are just not creating the number of jobs that are going to fuel or provide that fuel to get our folks to middle class. So what do we do, right? What do we do to overcome this almost ironclad correlation between family socioeconomic status and your economic outcomes? And there's a lot of work that we're doing in Providence, but I want to highlight today the fact that we have tried as best as possible to embrace the community college system. And I think that if we are mining for opportunities, I think we'll all find a lot of opportunities by partnering with our community colleges. A few things that I'd like to highlight today. First of all, we have a very strong partnership with our schools and our community college. So much so that community college professors are teaching coding and technology-based courses inside of our high schools to our high school graduates beginning as sophomores. So as early as 10th grade, our kids can start taking college credit courses. And not only does this help to create a college-going culture inside of the school building, but also our kids are graduating with some college credits by the time they finish high school so that they're well on their way and can offset some of the cost. At the same time, we're taking advantage of the community college's advantage and their expertise in developing a curriculum around workforce training. So for example, we have a HealthWorks initiative. We have a number of nonprofits, including hospitals in Providence. They have a strong nursing program, and so they're helping our workforce development system develop a customized professional development and workforce development curriculum so that our students or our adults are getting the skills that are specifically needed in the industry and the market today. And then, the last piece that isn't perhaps as tangible as the hard or concrete partnerships that we have in our schools and workforce development, we've also had high-level conversations about how to engage the communities that surround our community college systems. Because the reality is that community change happens at the speed of trust. And even though many of our community colleges reside in sometimes low-income neighborhoods or neighborhoods with heavy Latino, African American, and communities of color, sometimes there's a psychological barrier that might exist between the community and the community college. And so how do we intentionally bring in that community so that they feel a part of what we're building and doing? So we work from a very basic principle, and that is that people support what they help to create. Right? People support what they help to create. So to the extent that we're engaging people from the very beginning and genuinely integrating them into the planning phases, we believe that the ultimate outcome would be much more significant and impactful.
Great. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Mayor. Julian?
Well, let me. All right, am I on? Yes. Whew, thank you, Mayor. Great. So set me up so beautifully here, and thanks so much for including me on the panel. I'd love to talk a little bit about what one community college is doing, and really then zero in on the partnership with the city, which is so essential to making this work. And I put together a few slides if people who are not behind the pole can see them. I've spent the better part of the last 30 years thinking about how to make education more responsive to the economy, and I ran a consulting think tank that did work in 23 states and scores of regions. Actually did some work here looking at the community colleges back in 2011, how they could sort of function more as an engine of workforce development, and as well with the Community College of Rhode Island. Took a look at them. And I came to believe that there's this sort of inherent disconnect between employers and educators and workforce people, mostly because we speak different languages and a tendency to kind of talk past one another, and came to believe that competencies really offer a key to getting everyone on the same page, that employers use competencies in job descriptions, and we can use them to inform education and training and our students and their families. And so a few years ago, I helped to start a college at Southern New Hampshire University, an online competency-based college that we modestly called College for America to sort of prove this, what can I say, to sort of prove this approach, working in partnership with employers, that a competency-centric approach can be very effective at helping people advance both their education and workforce standing. And this past summer, I joined the Community College of Rhode Island after having lived in Rhode Island the last decade, well, 11 years next month, and working all around the country. I joined the Community College of Rhode Island because of all the just amazing leadership in the state, including Mayor Lorza and our governor and workforce and economic development folks and education leaders who really buy into this notion that we need a much greater alignment and sort of focus among the various actors in workforce development. And we are the largest community college in New England, and so our performance at the community college is really central to the Rhode Island's economic prosperity and advancement. And so in March of this year, CCRI was featured in the Atlantic as part of an article called The Third Education Revolution, which sort of highlighted the way innovative colleges and partners are emphasizing this culture of lifelong learning in order to keep pace with the changing economy. So just a few words about that. Well, so here's what I told the reporter who wrote the piece. One thing I told him. While we don't know what skills will be required for the human-centric jobs of the future, we do know that these jobs will require a highly adaptable workforce that can think critically, creatively, and work collaboratively to find solutions to rapidly developing complex problems. The article also cited a couple of studies, one from the University of Oxford that found that predicted that nearly half of American jobs were at risk of being taken over by computers within the next 2 decades. Another from McKinsey found that, it's a third of American workers may have to change jobs because of artificial intelligence by 2030. So we're hearing these doomsday predictions. And my team, not that it's doomsday yet, but my team is beginning to we're beginning to witness this shift in our discussions with Rhode Island employers. So as we're advancing our partnerships with companies, we're seeking to understand those competencies, the mix of competencies that are required in sort of anticipated jobs in these firms. And what we're finding are certain themes keep emerging. We're finding that companies want workers with reliable soft skills. And by that I mean communications, thinking critically, working teams, adapting to change. But they also want workers with some technical skills around writing, math, and some data and digital literacy. I mean, it's cutting across the board. Like, what will be left for us when the machines take over? And so, for example, we're working with General Dynamics Electric Boat, which is building the next and next generations of nuclear submarines in Rhode Island and hiring 10,000 people by the end of the decade. And we actually trained 800 of their employees this year in entry-level trade worker jobs, but we're now working with General Dynamics to look at professional and advanced professional leadership training that will help folks move into more advanced and technical jobs and management in the company. We're doing similar work with CVS Health, with farm techs in training that opens the way to higher level technical jobs. And perhaps the most sort of forward-looking example, we're partnering with Infosys, which is a global consulting, technology and management consulting firm that's actually elected to base one of their sort of innovation hubs in Rhode Island. They too are looking to hire 10,000 Americans over the next couple of years. And what we're looking at with Infosys are jobs that require sort of a basic academic grounding and some technical skill. And for those of us who live in states, very much in the Northeast, we see this where, sort of in community colleges, typically the academic side and the vocational side, never the twain shall meet. This entails a whole new coming together that we've never experienced before. And so what that means is my group in workforce development is really about leveraging resources. The only way this happens is leveraging resources. So we're leveraging resources that cut across the institution. I'm working hand in hand with our academic team and bringing together industry experts and workforce experts to build programs that are for credit, that involve chunking and stacking of curriculum so that people can earn whatever credentials they need to advance, but they all sort of keep adding up and become part of the lifelong learning portfolio. We're working hand in hand with our economic development and workforce partners at both the state and city levels. So for example, we played a critical role at the community college in helping to bring Infosys to the state. And we're engaging with the city. And so the city is really well, obviously Providence is the capital and heart of our state. And, with its diverse population and robust resources, and we cannot, we are, maybe not cash money, but we have incredible resources. We have human resources, we have talent, we have some infrastructure to work with, not enough. But what we do have, the college brings 5 campuses, the ability to organize programming at all these campuses, diverse set of faculty resources and curriculum, and we can do online and on-site. And so what we're looking for now is to work with the city. We realize we need to expand our footprint in Providence. And so we need, for example, to make it possible for more Providence students to be able to make it through our entire system without having to leave home, without having to leave Providence. We need to look at ways that we can deepen, as Mayor Lorza said, deepen the ties with the community to build a sort of more inclusive talent pipeline. And we really need to view the college as both a cultural and economic driver in the community. And so it's that very partnership, I believe, sort of leveraging both the infrastructure and strategic partnerships that in our city and in yours that will enable us to ride the third wave. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Julian. Ruchi. Ruchi Baumick is the Senior Vice President at PepsiCo and our host and sponsor for today. And she leads public policy and governmental relations and all the complexities and also the partnerships with local governments and cities and mayors throughout the country. PepsiCo's done well, we're about to hear about it, a lot of work in this space, a lot of new initiatives happening. But Ruchi comes to this role from the White House, having worked at the White House from 2009 to 2013, the previous White House. As Deputy Assistant to President Obama and the Deputy Cabinet Secretary, so the glue holding together the cabinet and the administration, and so understands the world of government and electeds as well. So, Ruchi, thanks so much for being a part of it, and let's hear what you got to say. Thank you so much,
Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here, and I really want to commend the mayor, both of you, and as well as your colleagues in the U.S. Conference of Mayors for convening this event. It's such a wonderful opportunity to engage with you all and share ideas, but also to focus on this issue because it's so critical, obviously not only for your communities, but for the employers who have the privilege of operating in your communities. I'm very excited to be at PepsiCo. I've been here for a little bit over a year. We employ over 130,000 people in the United States, over 1,000 people in the state of Massachusetts, over 300 in the state of Rhode Island, over 300 in actually West Sacramento. Yep. So we are really happy to be and proud to be strong community partners across the country. One of the exciting things I was able to work on in the White House that is continued here in my role as PepsiCo is working with workforce training initiatives and community colleges. One of the key initiatives of the president was a focus on workforce training initiatives and partnering community colleges with local employers to address local employment needs, exactly what you all are doing. We developed a group, it was called Skills for America's Future. It's now called Upskilling America, and it's at the Aspen Institute. And I will give credit to someone in the administration who realized that it was critical to ensure that some of the president's initiatives lived outside of the federal government. So this is a public-private partnership. It is not federally funded, and as a result, it still exists, and it's at the Aspen Institute. But at PepsiCo, we do recognize and partner with community colleges across the country, and I'm very excited to show sorry for teeing it up a little bit late, but this is a video capturing one of our recent announcements and one of our proud partnerships.
We're really excited about this partnership. You guys came to us and your leadership to really make an impact in our communities through offering a link from education to employment, a direct link to education and employment.
We're all bringing to life opportunities for one another, to operate in a business, to build careers, to build families, etc. And we're so excited to be here.
It's truly inspirational to see that you're working hard with goals in mind and that there's an avenue for you for your hard work to pay off.
The conversation that I had with President Kerry, he said, if you train them, we'll provide them the jobs. And guess what? He's kept this commitment today. And for that, I'm grateful.
There are a couple of moments in the year that really make you feel proud to be part of the organization. This is one of them. I see the bright eyes and the excitement in these young people getting a chance to start out with us, and that makes me feel like we're making a good investment for our future.
When companies step up and really partner with educational partners, it really connects the wholeness of the city.
I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart, because this is what it's all about.
This is about getting people into permanent jobs and permanent career paths. We need to be there for them, and it's through programs like this and it's through leadership like yours that we are there for them.
You are opening the doors of opportunities to those young people, and we want to thank you. We want to thank you for your leadership in that very much.
So thank you to Pepsi for thinking outside the box. Thank you for raising the bar for good corporate citizenship here in Chicago, and for investing in Chicago's strengths, and in Chicago's students, and in Chicago's future.
She was president of Olive Henry College, so that's her successor. That's just fortuitous. So we didn't know that was going to happen. But that partnership specifically is providing opportunities for young people to train on equipment that we use, to develop certifications that aren't PepsiCo specific, so they're portable. So they're not necessarily beholden to us, but if they want to, there's a good paying job at the other end. One of the things we realized, as you know, and as you all know too well, even with community colleges potentially having a lower tuition rate, they still are out of reach for far too many people. So to supplement what we're doing at city colleges, we're also offering full scholarships. So we're kind of hitting at it from all angles, but we understand there's much more to do. We have a wonderful partnership in Perry, Georgia, where we actually are working with the Harvey Career Academy, which is a high school. So we have juniors and seniors that are taking courses that will not only help them lead to a job at PepsiCo, but also will count as credit at the Central Georgia Community College or Technical College. So we're looking at this from different angles, looking for ways to find wonderful partners like the ones here, and addressing our real needs for employment. We're proud that we were continuing to employ people, but understand the realities of the future as the workforce is changing. We have one of the largest truck fleets in the country, but we also just made one of the largest orders, I think it is still the largest order of Tesla driverless trucks. And as much as people think, well, that's that's not going to require a driver, you need to have a body in there. So I was actually asking our CEO, I was like, well, what should we call the people that the truck driver of the future is going to be a different, it's a different job. And she said, should we call them an executive? And it's true. They're going to sit in the middle of the truck. It's a really amazing thing. And you have to know how to operate the computer. So, yes, we're going to see some changes in jobs, but some of these jobs are just going to actually be upskilled, and we need to all be partnering together to be ready for them. So we're really excited to be here today. Obviously, want to listen and learn, but also want to stand ready to partner with you. We actually just started a pilot program building off of what we just did at City Colleges with 14 other communities across the country, which is our Frontline Community College pilot program, so that we can partner before we have the hiring need with trainees, with students, and help them build the skills necessary to be job ready at the other end.
Great. Rishi, thanks so much. I know in West Sacramento, the bottling jobs have mostly been automated, but so far the computers and the robots cannot figure out the different kinds of chips to put into a mixed box of chips.
And the quality of chip that go.
But they will, right? So we have at least for those workers, we have a little bit more time, but we don't have infinity. Right. So next we're joined by two of our community college partners from right here in the Boston area, Dr. Pam Ettinger, who's the president of Bunker Hill Community College, and Dr. Valerie Roberson, who we've just heard reference to, who's now the president of Roxbury Community College. And they're going to briefly describe the work that they've been doing building partnerships successfully between their community colleges, the city, job training providers, and local industry.
Well, I'm happy to go first. As was mentioned, I'm the president of Roxbury Community College, and just to provide a context, we serve a student population that's 90% minority, 80% eligible for the highest level of financial aid. And so these are individuals that really can benefit from the opportunity to advance in their careers, and they're looking for opportunities to make a livable wage. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
sorry to interrupt. Folks in the back can, yeah.
Okay, so sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things, and it's so interesting to hear a business partner, because that's the thing that gets us excited, is that synergy between the business needs and what our students needs. I want to just tell you about just 2 programs just to kind of illustrate the types of partnerships that we're able to do with business support. One of them really is an academic program, but as was mentioned before, the faculty that we use and the curricula that we use needs to be based in industry in order for our students to be able to have the best chance for employment. We were fortunate enough to have a $70 million construction project that included a opportunity to go geothermal, solar canopies that reduced our footprint along with reducing our costs towards energy. Well, that demonstration, that physical demonstration, enabled business folks to start seeing Roxbury as someone that might be able to solve their business issue. And so we were approached by some business community leaders who said there really isn't a program that prepares the individuals that are now going to have to work these high efficiency systems. And so you've got one, what can we do together to build a curriculum? And so from that grew 12 businesses that worked together to define the learning outcomes that were needed, the skills that were needed in order for these individuals to be employed. We put together a curriculum, and we thought this isn't just enough for a student to have an associate's degree, because in today's world, as we've already described, skills are changing on a daily basis. And so we wanted to ensure that our students had an opportunity, once they got into the workforce, to also be able to continue their skills and perhaps even complete a bachelor's degree. So we sought out a business, another community partner, which is the 4-year institution that had a program that was similar in building maintenance technology. And so this partnership grew into an associate's degree that students will be able to start in that industry in positions that pay up to $65,000 just to start. So this is the kind of thing that we're able to do that really changes lives. When we have that business and industry input, it just makes us so much more effective. The second program I wanted to mention to you is a program we call Jobs First. And in this case, again, similarly, we were approached by an individual that owns a home health care agency and serves over 100 sites. He was having a problem identifying the right individuals to take positions within this industry, and came to us to talk about graduates. And we said, before we talk about graduates, let's talk about program, because let's design the curriculum that you need in order to make sure that the people that come out of the program have the particular skills that you need. We were able to do that. I want to talk just a minute about replacement costs, because when you start to look at the cost of replacing an employee, you're looking at 6 months of their annual salary, okay? That's going to be, if it's a $60,000 job, obviously, that's going to be a costly endeavor. Well, for the cost of replacing individuals, that employer was able to support 20 individuals to be trained. Our training in that case was $1,200. So the employer picked up the cost of all of the students in the class. They were able to test their work ethic, because the attendance was required. The employer was able to work with us to have access to, progress, to understand how the students were working in that class. Halfway through, the employer was so satisfied with the progress of the training that he came and gave offer letters to all students that were in the class. At the end of the program, 18 of those 20 students made it all the way through. One person had some family issues that caused them, and the employer said, we'll make sure we get them in the next round of training. But for that minimal cost, they were able to have a workforce that supplied them for the first 6 months of their industry. That's what the power of working together with business and industry does to change lives for individuals and really ensure that this population makes a livable wage.
Great, thanks so much, Dr. Robertson. We have just a couple, we're running way behind, so I'm going to ask Dr. Derby if you could be a bit brief, because we want to make sure we have time for some mayoral interaction and questions. And if you cut mayors off from having any chance to talk or ask questions, your water gets turned off, your toilet doesn't flush, you end up in jail, the cat stays in the tree. It's just bad news all around. So.
We have no doubt in the greater Boston area that we all work for the mayor. Let's put that out there. And one thing about working for our rock star mayor is that he gets it. Everything that you said, he's done. And the power in that is he was upfront when he says, I'm going to find you some sustainable money in order to fund students who can't afford it. And then the governor came in and said, well, let us add some more money to the pot because we really want Greater Boston to develop a workforce that's contemporary and that's flexible. The Boston Bridge program is one of the most powerful programs that is on the ground today. You talked about the College Promise launching today. This is Martha Cantor's favorite program in the Northeast. Okay, I can tell you that right now. So it is that kind of support that provides the magic. What I see, this is a new ecosystem, right? This is really a K-16 ecosystem where what you've heard, there's a real pattern. You know who the key is. You got to start them early before they come to college. The colleges got to be flexible. You got to have employers. You got to have money and jobs at the other end. And the people you're training will deliver for you. One thing that I want to bring up that is important to this conversation is that adults now are the center of higher education. They're no longer 17 and a half. And that's a really important thing for our employees to know and for our educational system to know. They are now the majority. So a 24-year-old or 30-year-old, 40-year-old, higher education is not the center of their world. It is their family that's their center of the world. So whatever we do to train them to get to a better place or a better job, or policies in our companies or policies in the public sphere has to address what does it look like when you try to bring a 30-year-old through a program that we just described, and it's very different. And I think that's part of the new ecosystem and the new wave that we got to pay attention to. And I think Boston's done it because we are finding new jobs and the next level skills jobs for our employees. Do I have time, like 15 seconds?
Sure.
Okay. So an example, Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital. They take their lowest level workers and good workers, janitors, cafeteria workers. They pull them out and say, we will pay for you to become the X-ray technicians, the nurses, the LPNs, a full program. Incumbent worker training, knowing work ethic is going to come through. It is one of those ecosystems that the college and the employer created, and it's growing, and I think this is the future.
Terrific. All
Sure
right.
enough?
Yes, perfect.
There you go.
Thank you so much. You do have a lot of experience with Mayor Walsh in speed. So we're going to open it up for questions or comments. Maybe first from mayors, if you have some. This has this is a blended conversation, right? We laid it out as a revolution. Most of what you heard is not really a revolution, right? Especially for those who are here in the Workforce Development Council, the ideas, the concepts, and many of the programs are not radical. They are the first steps to what is changing in this third revolution. In the same sense that as many of our cities are preparing for autonomous vehicles or other changes in mobility, we're not really preparing for tomorrow 100% autonomous. This is in some sense, you're hearing about projects that are the cruise control and the backing up cameras that you already have in your communities with respect to the third education revolution. We will have future conversations around what about the other providers? What if Amazon starts issuing micro-credentials as part of your Prime membership? What if Netflix starts offering lifelong learning opportunities as a MOOC, as a massively online course? So we'll be looking at some of the really radical parts of the revolution, but no revolution happens only in that way. And so what we're hearing about today are things I hope will help, whether in Findlay, Ohio or Gresham, Oregon. What you're hearing is these are pieces that exist in my community today or right nearby with with local colleges and other partners, that we can be at the forefront of leading that revolution in a way that fits the context and the conditions and the opportunities in my own city.
My name is Ira Sofowitz from Learning Game Studios. Thank you. You've got a panel with several presidents of community colleges, and there's been some talk of the ecosystem and also a little bit on credentialing. My question is, how do you deepen that ecosystem so that you're reaching those who lack foundational skills, get them into an HSC program, so the high school equivalency program, so they can get to your level, which is essentially middle skills training?
Right.
How do you deepen that ecosystem so it reaches all strata of society?
Folks talk a lot about skills gaps. I say that there's an invisible gap that no one's acknowledging, and that is about almost all students, about 90% of my students coming in 2 levels below college in math, and about 50% are the same way in English. So what we've done is that we've built early college initiatives so that we reach back into K-12, right, into the high school environment to start that remediation earlier. So I've got 1,000 dual enrollment students who are doing some of that work to be ready. We're also in the Boston area, there are a lot of community-based organizations who are receivers of immigrants and refugees and first generations, and they do a lot of that training with us. So we're forming a theory of change that allows all the different groups of different abilities to plug in, and we're part of that group. Just like we're aligning our competencies with our employers, we're aligning our entry competencies with these groups who are helping to remediate. There's no silver bullet, and if I told you there was one, I'd be lying. But there are 3 or 4 different things that we're doing in the city of Boston that are beginning to move the needle of the students coming into the school environment, the college environment, much farther ahead. And we've reduced remediation to less than a year now because we're really accelerating that work. So all of that is happening. Boston is special in that way that we've got probably about 75 community-based organizations out there doing that kind of work, right? And that we're intentionally connecting in, which is useful.
Yes.
So my name is Steve Tompkins. I'm the sheriff of Suffolk County here in Boston.
We work for him, too.
That's because you want to stay out of my facility, of course.
That's right.
But to that end, what are you doing to help folks that are incarcerated, mostly black and brown individuals, with a low education acumen once they transition out of a facility like mine? And on the county level, guys are only with us for 12 months, ladies 6 months. How are you wrapping your arms, or are you wrapping your arms around that demographic to help them move forward?
So in our case, we are actively working with students even before they are released. Both Pam and I are participating in a pilot where we're going into the facility to provide training for those individuals that don't have GEDs. We're providing the concentrated efforts to get them to the college level, and we're also offering computer classes. We work with those individuals, but it's the same work that we do with individuals that come to our campus. And I would argue that remediation is changing these days. Now, what we're finding is that with the concentrated effort, direct involvement with the instructor, and perhaps more time. Individuals do not need to take as many developmental classes. In fact, they can take the college level course with support outside, and that's the model that we're using with all of those populations.
Julian?
Well, just to add on, I was actually just yesterday at the graduation ceremony at the Rhode Island correctional facility, at our medium security facility, where several students earned earn their associate's degrees and others GEDs. But what we're looking to do, and this relates actually back to the first question, is with folks who are like not ready for college level work, number one, we're looking to bridge them by helping them get GEDs, by partnering with community organizations, but also by doing this in the context of workforce development and helping them get onto post-secondary tracks that will also enable them to get work, possibly while they're continuing school. And with the correctional facility, we're really looking to take what has traditionally just been a get a GED or get a gen ed degree to, you know, get a gen ed degree that's going to lead you to a job in advanced manufacturing. Yeah.
Mayor?
I agree entirely with this idea of creating the programs that serve particular communities, but at the same time, you know, we also have to be very mindful of that link between the opportunities that are available and the communities that can take advantage of them. You know, I think of something that Professor David Kennedy said about people involved with the criminal justice system. He says it very provocatively, where he relates that, you know, oftentimes we say, you know, those folks are so beyond reach. You know, they don't care about anyone. The truth is that they may not care about me, they may not care about us, but there's someone in the community that they do care about that can reach them. And so how are we institutionally forming partnerships with those bridges in the community that can reach those hard-to-reach communities?
And I just wanted to speak from a private employer standpoint. We support Ban the Box. So, I mean, because that obviously is another obstacle to employment after release. And so we work with some felon reentry programs across the country.
Yeah, as we look forward to the extension of this revolution concept, I think it is important, though, to also be thinking about kind of universal design, right? The Social Security model of this. If we replicate some of the mistakes that we've made in the past of thinking about from the beginning, identifying lifelong learning, for an example, as something that is for special populations who just need help. It's not for you and for me. The funding systems that emerge in order to support them, the community support, the employer commitment. We've got to be able to do both simultaneously, build a system that really does revolutionize the way that economic opportunity happens for all and leaves nobody behind. And I think those are both critically important. I think we had a question. Yes?
I just had a question about that employer engagement piece of it. So maybe if the other colleges could comment on how they're working with their employer partners to influence Ban the Box or to influence further, you know, investment in the scholarship programs and things like that PepsiCo was talking about. Just other examples of that.
And maybe if you can put a mayoral lens on it, if there are partnerships that you've had with either Mayor Walsh or others in the region, as we're trying to think about how mayors are engaged in this work.
Yes. So here's an example of sort of a municipal as well as a regional effort. In Massachusetts, there's a group called the Mass Competitive Partnership. It is the CEOs of some of the largest corporations that are anchored in Greater Boston, right? So the Raytheons and the State Streets and the Staples and the Suffolk Construction. Within that organization, they have a cluster that's educationally focused. And the ability for the city to have a tie into a group like this, and for that group to think about community colleges as a part of their strategy for workforce development. That was the beginning of the Bunker Hill Community College Learn and Earn program. When you think about internships, usually you think about the Northeasterns and the first-tier colleges of sending their students out for free. All right, and you have free labor and all of those, and then they get hired. And community colleges, 3/4 of my students work. Nobody's going to quit a job to go on an internship and then go look for another job again. It's an equity issue, right? So the suggestion coming from MACP, these high-level CEOs, is we need to fund these paid internships and then give them a transportation stipend. So these students who are first-generation students can get into the corporate environment and learn it. And it's been about 3 or 4 years now, and this model has been repeated now, all across the country. And it allows community college students who's never been in a corporate environment to know. When they go, they're in jeans and a T-shirt. When they come back, they're in ties and suits. I mean, you can see the transformation. So it's not that students can't learn at a different socioeconomic level or that we don't align. It's making that opportunity and recognizing that these are adults and we need to have equity in the lens by which we grow the program.
So, Richie, you mentioned the work that PepsiCo has been doing in terms of the credentialing as well, and open credentials that are not unique to the company. And this is an area where mayors have been involved around the country in the development with fits and starts. It's a hard work, but the development and curating of digital badge ecosystems in Chicago and Dallas and my city and others. And you've also all talked about the micro credentials and some of the work that's happening. How are you dealing with, and how can mayors deal with the cacophony of micro credentials and badges, and how are we going to? Do you feel like we're heading somewhere where our systems can all connect, where the data can, so that a badge that's issued by Providence, which was one of the very first cities in the country to do digital badges of any form, that badge can count if they go to one of your institutions, and then it can be seen by an employer, and that you ultimately can see that as well? How do you feel about the progress that we're making, or not, in terms of really creating an interchangeable, interoperable credentialing and micro-credentialing system?
Well, you mentioned that a lot of these are not new ideas. And in fact, you can harken back to students coming on campus to take exams, equivalency exams, and CLEP exams, and those types of things, a portfolio assessment. That work is now coming back into vogue, and I think that each of the community colleges in Massachusetts, we just wrote a proposal where we're all going to work together to develop one system for portfolio assessment and credit for life experience, and we'll be rolling in those kinds of micro-credentials that you mentioned, as well as special populations that bring credentials to our campuses, like our veterans who have already engaged in training for the military. There's a lot of those skills that are transferable into degrees and occupations, and so that's the work that you'll see more and more of the colleges engaged in that work.
And the mayors can fund them.
Oh, great. Okay. Wow. Julian.
And on the point about badging, I think it is a bit of the Wild West out there with the badging. And from a workforce perspective, I believe that the badge is only valuable if employers will value it. And that I think that we need to work in partnership to, both to market, but also to make sure that to use the bully pulpit that the mayors have to bring employers to the table who are serious about whatever credentials we're talking about, and to hold their feet to the fire and in terms of recognizing them.
Mayor Lorza, you not uniquely, but rarely among mayors have a official authoritative role with respect to your schools that most of us don't enjoy. I guess that's the right verb. Most of us don't enjoy that. That aside, though, given the deep partnerships that you've been building around this work with your local educational providers as well as the workforce system and employers, what's a lesson or two for other mayors that might just be getting started in this work? Something that you wish you had known when you began.
Yeah, I think that whether you control the schools or not, the mayor is uniquely positioned to be that link, that bridge that brings the different institutions together. Like, for example, some of the partnerships that we spoke about with the Community College of Rhode Island, it's a natural thing where you start off with one small partnership, you're working together, you're in the same room, next thing you know it leads to the next idea. Little by little, these kernels of an idea develop into something special. You develop a good working relationship. So what I would say to any mayor is keep doing what mayors do, which is move the ball forward every single day. And through these relationships, these amazing ideas come together when you put, mission-driven, smart, hardworking people in the room together. So I'd say that, the other thing where mayors are uniquely positioned, I go out to small businesses on a pretty regular basis and do tours and get to understand who they are. And I'm sure mayors have this experience all the time, that you visit these small businesses and they tell you that first time in years that a mayor has visited them, they feel forgotten. They don't know about the tools and the resources out there for them. So you have this perspective that very few people have the opportunity to have. And And what's the truth with these small businesses is that they recognize that they can't train their own employees the way that the IBMs, AT&Ts, and the big companies can, but they also understand that their employees need to continue to upskill because they see their own machinery and their own workflows being mechanized. So they understand their need, but they also acutely understand their limitations in filling that need. Frankly, the mayor is oftentimes the only ambassador and champion for small businesses. So if you have a direct line into the community college system, the mayor and frankly, few other people, if not no one else, can make those links happen. So my recommendation to any mayors is, lean into this, dive into this, and make things happen, and then you'll see these initiatives grow.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Yeah. Yeah. All right. I want to emphasize what Mayor Lorza just said. It also requires, patience is not the right word, but the same kind of emotional intelligence, political intelligence that mayors have to use every day. And my experience working with both mayors and colleges and workforce boards is that we forget that the other places are also complicated, messy institutions. And so just as if you come to my city hall, most of the time you're going to get a great experience. Once in a while, maybe not. And we work on that. The same thing is true with the other institutions. So it isn't enough. Often, it isn't enough simply to have at a breakfast signing a compact with the president of the college, and expect the things to happen. It is identifying who are change makers inside the college, which faculty members want to do something different and try something out, which companies really can come to bear, but not just the companies within the company. Again, not just the breakfast where the CEO of the local business and the CEO of the college and the mayor sign something, but the HR director or the general counsel, where usually all these great ideas go to die. Understanding the dynamics of those institutions, so that when the first answer back from the general counsel and HR is no, you don't give up. Right? Mayors know. We know that in City Hall. I got a battle with the HR and the general counsel all the time. So do my peers. And so, as Julian was talking about the language differences, they're actually not as different as we think. It's just easier to perceive the rest of the world as these unitary institutions that are all encapsulated in their CEO. And we know that's not true for us, and we often have to remember that that's not true for our partners if we really want to move the ball down the line. So, all right. I want to thank our panel, our outstanding panel, and I know Mayor Walsh. As you might imagine, Mayor Walsh is I think he's literally on every single panel in the entire conference, as well as running the city and running ahead to each event to make sure everything's swept and clean. So I know he really wanted to be here because he's incredibly proud of what is happening in Boston, and is really one of the great thought leaders, really particularly in the connection between employers and organized labor as well, and the work on apprenticeships. So we're really really proud to have him host the conference and this panel as well. But thank you so much to our panelists. Thanks to all of you. Tomorrow morning we'll have the Jobs, Education, and Workforce Committee official meeting. On that agenda is one resolution that deals with precisely this issue. It's resolution number 62 for those of you who are mayors, that deals with the reauthorization of the Higher Education Act, but reauthorization of the Higher Education Act in light of micro-credentials, in light of incarcerated individuals, in light of an array of providers, in light of blending with the workforce, all the ideas and concepts that we've talked about today. So I would encourage you to give that a look, and we will see you at the next Best Practices session. Thanks very much.